The crystalline halls of the Galactic Council gleamed with light from the neutron star below, casting rainbow patterns across walls that had witnessed 12,000 years of unbroken peace. High Arbiter Zuthen stood before the Grand Assembly Chamber, his 6 eyes scanning the gathered representatives of 47 species, each one a testament to the Council's supreme authority over this section of the galaxy. "Another routine session," he announced, his translator converting his thoughts into forms every species could understand. "We gather to discuss trade disputes, colony allocations, and the continued prosperity of our alliance." The chamber hummed with agreement, a sound that blended clicks, whistles, electromagnetic pulses, and subsonic vibrations into something resembling harmony. Observer Telkva shifted nervously in her seat near the back of the chamber, her chitinous fingers tapping against the datapad that held information she had been reviewing. For 3 solar cycles. She was young by Council standards, only 15 years in service, and bringing concerns to the High Arbiter required courage she wasn't certain she possessed. "High Arbiter," she transmitted, her voice barely rising above the general murmur. "I request permission to present new findings from Sector 771. Zuthen's expression showed mild annoyance, the kind reserved for interruptions of carefully planned agendas, but protocol demanded he acknowledge her. "Proceed, Observer Telkva, though I hope this matter warrants disrupting our schedule." Telkva activated her presentation, causing a holographic display to materialize above the chamber's center. A small yellow star appeared, surrounded by 8 planets, one of which glowed with the telltale signs of industrial civilization. 3 cycles ago, our long-range sensors detected a new species in this system, she explained, trying to keep her voice steady. They call themselves humans, and they have achieved faster-than-light travel. Several council members made sounds of polite interest, though most seemed bored. New species were discovered every few decades, and the process of observation and eventual contact had become routine over millennia. "How long have they possessed industrial technology?" asked Council Member Vexnor, a gaseous being whose form rippled with curiosity. "Approximately 200 of their years," Telkva responded. The chamber fell silent. Then laughter erupted from multiple delegates, a cacophony of amusement that made Telkva's antenna droop with embarrassment. 200 years? Zuthen's voice carried clear disbelief. From primitive combustion engines to faster-than-light travel in 2 centuries? Observer, please check your calculations. Such rapid advancement is impossible. "I have checked them 17 times, High Arbiter," Telkva insisted, her voice firmer now. "The data is correct, and there is more that troubles me." She expanded the hologram, showing a network of structures throughout the human solar system. Stations orbited every major planetary body. Defensive platforms ringed the asteroid belt, and energy signatures indicated widespread militarization. "They have fortified their entire star system," she continued. "Every moon, every strategic position, every approach vector has been armed and defended." Council Member Yarmil, a tall, elegant being who served as the Council's chief diplomat, leaned forward with interest. "Fascinating," he mused. "They clearly expect threats, yet they broadcast radio signals openly, almost desperately seeking contact. A contradiction in behavior. Perhaps they are simply cautious." Delegate. "Many young species fear the unknown." Zuthen waved a dismissive appendage, already growing tired of the discussion. "They are clearly eager for contact, as Observer Telkva noted, and their defensive posture is merely the paranoia common to isolated species," he declared. "We shall follow standard first contact protocol. Dispatch the Harmonious Dawn with a diplomatic envoy, make peaceful contact, and begin the process of integration into the Council." "High Arbiter," Telkva transmitted urgently, "I strongly recommend we proceed with additional caution. The rate of their technological advancement is unprecedented, and their military development seems appropriate for a species that developed alone. Zhu then interrupted, his tone making clear the discussion was over. Observer Telkva, your diligence is noted, but 12,000 years of successful first contacts speaks louder than nervous speculation. Council Member Yarmil, you will lead the delegation. Yarmil stood gracefully, bowing his head in acceptance. It will be my honor, High Arbiter. I shall prepare the Harmonious Dawn for immediate departure. As the council moved on to other matters, Telkva remained focused on her datapad, scrolling through information that made her increasingly uneasy. The human development curve wasn't just fast, it was aggressive, focused, and showed a level of coordination that usually took species thousands of years to achieve. Their weapons technology had progressed even faster than their propulsion systems, and every piece of intercepted communication suggested a species obsessed with preparation for conflict. She pulled up historical data on other species at similar development stages. The comparison made her blood run cold. Where other species had spent centuries debating the ethics of space colonization, humans had militarized their solar system in under a year. Where other species had built small exploration vessels, humans had constructed vast industrial complexes in orbit around multiple planets. Where other species had approached the stars with wonder and hope, humans had approached them with determination and weapons. They are not like us, she whispered to herself, knowing no one was listening. They are not like anyone we have ever encountered. But the council had made its decision, and the Harmonious Dawn was already being prepared. Yarmil selected his crew carefully, choosing diplomats and cultural specialists who had successfully integrated dozens of species into the council. The ship itself was a masterpiece of council engineering. 800 meters of elegant design, equipped with translation technology, cultural databases, and gifts meant to demonstrate the council's goodwill and technological superiority. We depart in 3 cycles, Yarmil announced to his team. Will be a routine first contact. We extend friendship, demonstrate the benefits of council membership, and welcome another species into galactic civilization. His crew nodded confidently, having heard similar briefings dozens of times. None of them noticed Observer Telkva in the observation gallery above, watching their preparations with growing dread. She had submitted her concerns in writing, following proper protocol, and had been politely thanked and dismissed. The council's confidence was absolute, built on 12 millennia of unchallenged supremacy. No species had ever posed a threat, and the Great Treaty ensured no vessel larger than 2 kilometers would ever be constructed. The Kryn War, 8,000 years past, had taught the galaxy that massive warships led to devastating conflicts. By limiting ship sizes, the Council had eliminated the possibility of any single species gaining military dominance, flawlessly, for longer than most civilizations existed. As the Harmonious Dawn launched from the Council Station, beginning its journey to human space, Telkva remained at her post, reviewing the data one more time. She noticed something she had missed before. Humans had stopped broadcasting their location 3 years ago, right after they achieved faster-than-light capability. The eager signals seeking contact had ceased abruptly, replaced by silence. They found out they were not alone, she realized, her voice barely audible, and they stopped calling out. Why would they do that? The answer came to her with terrible clarity. They had stopped advertising their presence because they had decided to prepare instead of invite. The galaxy was about to make first contact with a species that had spent 3 years building for a threat they hadn't yet met. And the Council, in its ancient wisdom and unshakable confidence, was walking blindly into an encounter with something entirely new. Something that might change everything. The Harmonious Dawn emerged from faster-than-light travel at the coordinates humans had transmitted, appearing at the edge of a massive gas giant's orbit. Jupiter, according to the human designation. Yarmil stood on the bridge, his elegant form silhouetted against the viewport that showed the enormous planet and its many moons. "Scan for human vessels," he commanded, expecting to wait several hours for contact. "3 ships approaching, Ambassador," his sensor officer reported immediately. They were waiting for us. Yarmil felt a small flutter of surprise. Most species needed time to detect arrivals and dispatch greeting parties, yet humans had positioned vessels at the exact arrival point. "Display their specifications," he requested. The holographic readout showed 3 identical vessels, each approximately 450 meters in length, bristling with what appeared to be weapon ports and armored plating, these as destroyer-class vessels. The communications officer reported, "We are receiving a transmission." A human face appeared on the screen, hairless on top with a carefully maintained facial covering humans called a beard, and eyes that seemed to evaluate everything they saw. "Welcome to human space," the human said, his voice translated into Yarmil's language. "I am Captain Rodriguez of the UNES Vigilant. We will escort you to Earth for formal negotiations." "We are honored by your greeting, Captain Rodriguez," Yarmil responded with his most diplomatic tone. "Your promptness is remarkable." Something flickered in the human's eyes. Amusement, perhaps. "We've been tracking your approach for 6 hours, Ambassador," Rodriguez replied. "Our sensor nets detected your FTL wake when you were still 3 light-years out. We had plenty of time to prepare." Yarmil kept his expression neutral, though alarm bells were beginning to sound in his mind. Harmonious Dawn used advanced stealth systems that made detection difficult until arrival. Humans shouldn't have been able to track them at such distances. "Shall we proceed to Earth?" Rodriguez asked. "The journey will take approximately 3 days at diplomatic speeds." The trip passed in a way that gradually transformed Yarmil's polite concern into genuine unease. The 3 human destroyers maintained perfect formation around the Harmonious Dawn, their movements precise and coordinated in a way that suggested extensive training. On the 2nd day, Yarmil invited Captain Rodriguez aboard for a cultural exchange, a standard practice meant to build understanding. Rodriguez accepted, bringing 2 officers who remained politely in the background. "Your vessels are quite impressive for a species so new to space travel," Yarmil commented as they toured the Harmonious Dawn. "Such weapon systems must have taken decades to develop." "Actually, about 12 years from initial design to deployment," Rodriguez responded casually. "We prioritized military readiness once we achieved FTL. Seemed prudent, given how little we knew about what was out here." 12 years. The Council's newest frigate had taken 40 years to design and build, and humans had created these destroyers in 12. "A wise precaution," Yarmil said carefully. "Though I assure you, the galaxy is quite peaceful under Council guidance." Rodriguez smiled, though the expression didn't quite reach his eyes. "I'm sure it is, Ambassador, but we didn't know that 80 years ago, when we first achieved FTL, and by the time we figured out we weren't alone, well, we'd already committed to certain defense initiatives." "What kind of initiatives?" Yarmil asked, trying to sound merely curious. The captain gestured toward the viewport, where Jupiter dominated the view. "Every major moon in this system has defensive platforms," Rodriguez explained. "We've militarized the asteroid belt, established fortress stations at strategic Lagrange points, and created redundant sensor networks that can detect approaching vessels days before arrival." It seemed excessive at first, but the military convinced the civilian government that being unprepared was unacceptable. Yarmil's translator struggled to convey his species' equivalent of cold sweat. "That represents an extraordinary allocation of resources," he managed to say. "Your economy must be entirely focused on military production." "About 30%, Rodriguez corrected. "We maintained economic growth while building our defenses. Humans are pretty good at multitasking when motivated by existential uncertainty." The conversation continued, each revelation more disturbing than the last. Humans had achieved what Council species considered impossible: rapid militarization without economic collapse, advancement at unprecedented speeds, and system-wide coordination that usually required centuries of political evolution. Back in his quarters that night, Yarmil composed an urgent message to the Council. He chose his words carefully, knowing that panic could lead to poor decisions, but his concern bled through every sentence. Observer Telkva received his transmission at Council headquarters and immediately forwarded it to High Arbiter Zuthan with her own annotations. The response came 12 hours later, brief and dismissive. Your concerns are noted. Continue with First Contact Protocol. Primitive species often overcompensate with military displays when feeling vulnerable. Council remains confident in successful integration. Telkva wanted to scream. She pulled up the data again, cross-referencing human development with every species in Council history. The pattern was undeniable. Humans weren't overcompensating. They were preparing. A fundamental difference between species that built weapons out of fear and species that built weapons out of determination. Fear made species defensive and cautious. Determination made them dangerous. On the third day, Earth appeared ahead, a blue-green jewel surrounded by a halo of orbital infrastructure that took Yarmil's breath away. Hundreds of stations, thousands of satellites, ships moving in carefully controlled traffic patterns that spoke of mature spacefaring civilization. How long has Earth maintained orbital infrastructure? He asked Rodriguez, who had remained aboard as a liaison. Large-scale operations started about 70 years ago, the captain replied. We had some early satellites and space stations before that, but nothing significant until after FTL. 70 years. The Council's homeworld had taken 3 centuries to achieve similar orbital development. Captain Rodriguez, Yarmil said slowly, I must ask a direct question. How many military vessels does humanity currently operate? Rodriguez was quiet for a moment, seeming to consider how much to reveal. The destroyer class you've seen? We have 42 currently in service. Frigate-class vessels number around 300. With various support craft, bringing the total fleet to roughly 800 ships. The number staggered Yarmil. 800 military vessels for a species that had possessed FTL for only 80 years? Some Council member species didn't have 800 ships of any kind. That seems like quite a substantial fleet, he said carefully. It's adequate for now, Rodriguez replied, and something in his tone suggested he personally thought it was insufficient. Though you'll understand better when we reach Earth orbit. Understand what? The human captain smiled, and this time there was genuine warmth in the expression. Why we built what we built, Ambassador. Fear is a powerful motivator, but so is the determination to never be helpless. The harmonious dawn continued its approach, and Yarmil felt a growing sense that he was about to see something that would change everything. Rodriguez had that look humans got when they were about to reveal a surprise. And given everything Yarmil had learned about human nature in the past 3 days, their surprises were likely to be significant. The sensor officer suddenly gasped, a sound that transcended species barriers. Ambassador, she whispered, you need to see this. The main display activated, showing what their sensors had just detected. Yarmil stared at the readings, certain there must be an error. That cannot be accurate, he said, his voice barely functioning. Check the sensors. Recalibrate everything. Those numbers are impossible. Already done, sir, the sensor officer replied, her voice trembling. 3 times. The readings are correct. Captain Rodriguez stood quietly, watching the Council delegation process what they were seeing. Welcome to Earth, Ambassador Yarmil, he said softly. I hope you understand now. We built these because we didn't know what we'd find out here, and we refused to be unprepared. Yarmil couldn't speak, couldn't think, could only stare at the sensor readings that showed something the Council had believed impossible for 8,000 years. something that violated every treaty, every understanding, every assumption about how spacefaring civilizations operated. Ahead, holding position above Earth, was a ship that dwarfed everything he had ever seen. And according to the sensors, it wasn't alone. The UENS, Indomitable Will, hung in space like a dark monument to humanity's deepest fears and greatest capabilities. Yarmil's legs gave out, and he collapsed into his command chair, unable to process what his sensors were telling him. 47 kilometers, the sensor officer whispered, her voice breaking. 47 kilometers long. The Titan-class warship dominated Earth's orbital space, its hull reflecting sunlight in ways that suggested armor plating thicker than most Council vessels were wide. Weapons ports lined its surface, like the scales of some massive predator, and energy readings indicated power generation that exceeded the entire Harmonious Dawn by factors the computer struggled to calculate. "This violates the Great Treaty," Yarmil said, though his voice carried no authority, only shock. "No vessel may exceed 2 kilometers. The Council has maintained this law for 8,000 years. Captain Rodriguez shifted. Uncomfortably. "Ambassador, with respect, humanity isn't part of the Council yet, so we're not bound by your treaties," he said gently. "We didn't know about your laws when we designed the Titan class. We only knew we needed something that could protect humanity if we encountered hostile forces." The communications officer made a strangled sound. "Ambassador, sensors are detecting 6 more similar signatures. They appear to be in various stages of construction in orbital shipyards. 6 more. 7 total. 7 ships that each could likely destroy the entire Council defense fleet single-handedly." Yarmil's hands trembled as he activated emergency transmission protocols, sending everything they were seeing directly to Council headquarters. The signal would take hours to arrive, but when it did, the Council would face a crisis unlike anything in their 12,000-year history. "We would like to invite you aboard the Indomitable Will," Rodriguez said, his voice careful and diplomatic. "Fleet Admiral Chen believes a tour might help you understand our perspective." "Understand?" Yarmil's voice came out harsh. "Understand what? That humanity has built weapons capable of destroying entire civilizations? That you've created vessels 23 times larger than anything the galaxy has seen in millennia? That we built them hoping we'd never need to use them," Rodriguez replied quietly, "but refusing to be helpless if we did." 2 hours later, Yarmil and his delegation stood in the docking bay of the Indomitable Will, surrounded by vastness that defied comprehension. The bay itself could have held the entire Harmonious Dawn with room to spare. Hundreds of smaller craft lined the walls, fighters, bombers, assault shuttles, each one representing military capability that made Yarmil's head spin. Fleet Admiral Chen Wei met them personally, a human woman whose age was difficult to determine, but whose bearing spoke of absolute authority. "Ambassador Yarmil," she said, extending her hand in the human greeting gesture. "Welcome aboard humanity's hope and our greatest fear." "Greatest fear?" Yarmil asked, taking her hand. Cautiously. "We fear what we had to become to feel safe," Chen replied, gesturing for them to follow her. "Come. I'll show you what desperation and determination can build." The tour was both fascinating and terrifying. Chen led them through corridors wide enough to drive vehicles through, past crew quarters that housed 250,000 personnel, through manufacturing bays that could produce weapons and ammunition indefinitely, and into command centers that coordinated more systems than some Council species had on their entire homeworlds. "Artificial gravity throughout," Chen explained. "Redundant life support systems that can sustain the crew for 20 years without resupply. Armor plating designed to withstand weapons we haven't even invented yet." "Why?" Yarmil finally asked. "Why build something like this? What threat could possibly justify such extremes?" Chen stopped at a viewport that looked out over Earth. The blue planet turned slowly beneath them, peaceful and beautiful. 80 years ago, we discovered faster-than-light travel, she began, her voice taking on a storytelling quality. For the first time in human history, we could reach the stars, but we had no idea what was out there. She gestured toward the viewport. Earth is all we have, Ambassador. One planet, one species, no colonies, no allies, nothing but ourselves, Chen continued. Our history is 10,000 years of warfare, of civilizations rising and falling, of technological advancement driven by conflict and the need to survive. Yarmil listened, beginning to understand the human perspective, even as it terrified him. We nearly destroyed ourselves 6 times in the last century alone, Chen said softly. Nuclear weapons, biological warfare, artificial intelligence gone wrong, climate collapse. We survive by fractions, by luck and desperate innovation. She turned to face him directly. When we reached the stars, we made a collective decision as a species, Chen said. Never again would we be unprepared. Never again would we be helpless. Never again would we trust that the universe was kind. So you built these, Yarmil gestured at the massive ship around them. We built 7, Chen corrected, because we didn't know if we'd need 1 or 100, and 7 seemed like a number we could actually construct in a reasonable time frame. Reasonable? Yarmil's voice cracked. You built these in 35 years. 33 actually, Chen said with something that might have been pride. We started construction 3 years before we detected your council's existence. By then, we'd committed too many resources to stop. The communications officer interrupted them, his face pale. Admiral Chen, Fleet Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the council. They're requesting immediate explanation of our military capabilities. Chen glanced at Yarmil. I assume your people received the data? Hours ago, Yarmil confirmed. The High Arbiter will be convening an emergency session. Then perhaps we should have a frank conversation about humanity's intentions, Chen suggested, before your council makes assumptions that could lead to unfortunate decisions. She led them to a conference room, where holographic displays showed the Titan-class specifications in detail. Yarmil's delegation stared at numbers that seemed impossible. Main weapons batteries capable of cracking planetary crusts. Point defense systems that could track and destroy thousands of targets simultaneously. Power generation that could supply energy to entire cities. Manufacturing capabilities that made the ship self-sufficient for decades. This single vessel, one of Yarmil's military advisors said, his voice hollow, could fight the entire council fleet and likely win. Probably, Chen agreed without hesitation. We designed them that way. Overwhelming force, massive redundancy, the ability to stand alone against unknown threats. And you have 7, the advisor continued, soon to be operational. 6 are still under construction, Chen clarified. But yes, within 5 years, humanity will have 7 Titan-class vessels fully operational. Yarmil felt the weight of that statement. 7 ships that could reshape the galactic balance of power. 7 ships built by a species that had possessed faster-than-light travel for less than a century. 7 ships commanded by beings whose history was defined by survival through strength. What do you want? He asked finally. What does humanity want from the galaxy? Chen was quiet for a long moment. We want what everyone wants, she said eventually. Safety, prosperity, the chance to explore and grow. But we want it on our terms, with the strength to defend ourselves if necessary. The Council will see this as a threat, Yarmil said. We know, Chen replied, but we'd rather be seen as a threat and be safe, than be seen as weak and be destroyed. She pulled up another display, showing the partially constructed Titan-class vessels. Here's what I'll tell you, Ambassador, and you can relay it to your council, Chen said, her voice firm. Humanity doesn't seek conflict, but we won't be pushed around. We'll respect your laws where reasonable, but we won't dismantle what we've built to make you comfortable. And if the council demands it? Yarmil asked. Chen's expression hardened. Then they'll learn why we built 7 of these instead of 1, she said quietly. And they'll learn that humans, when pushed, don't surrender. We build more ships. The silence that followed was heavy with implications. Yarmil realized he was witnessing a fundamental shift in galactic power dynamics. The Council's 12,000 years of unchallenged authority had just encountered something they'd never faced before. A species that had prepared for war before ever meeting potential enemies. A species that viewed strength not as aggression, but as survival. A species that had built monuments to their fear and called them hope. I need to speak with the High Arbiter, Yarmil said finally. Of course, Chen agreed. Take all the time you need. Humanity has waited 80 years to meet the galaxy. We can wait a bit longer for the galaxy to decide what to do with us. The emergency session began in chaos. Representatives from 47 species filled the council chamber, their voices blending into a cacophony of alarm, disbelief, and fury. High Arbiter Suthen stood at the center, his 6 eyes fixed on the holographic display, showing the UNS indomitable will in all its terrifying glory. This is impossible. Council member Vexnor's gaseous form pulsed with agitation. The readings must be false. No species could construct such a vessel in less than a century. The readings have been verified 18 times, Observer Telkva reported, her voice cutting through the noise. 3 different analysis teams, all reaching the same conclusion. Humans have built 7 vessels, each 47 kilometers in length. The chamber erupted again. Delegates shouted over each other, demanding explanations, calling for action, arguing about protocol. Zuthen raised all 6 of his arms, commanding silence. Sheer force of presence. We will proceed with order, he declared, though his voice trembled slightly. Observer Telkva, present the complete analysis. Telkva activated the central display, showing detailed specifications of the Titan-class vessels. Each ship carries a crew of 250,000, she began. Power generation exceeds our largest stations. Armor plating is thicker than most Council vessels are wide. And weapon systems show energy signatures we've never encountered. How is their technology so advanced? Demanded General Korax, the Council's military commander. They've had FTL for 80 years. Their development curve is unprecedented, Telkva explained, pulling up comparative graphs. Where most species take 300 years to achieve what they've done in 80, humans appear to advance through crisis and necessity, rather than gradual progression. She highlighted specific data points, themselves multiple times, yet each crisis drove innovation. Nuclear weapons led to nuclear power. Artificial intelligence disasters led to better AI safety. Climate collapse led to terraforming technology, she continued. They don't advance despite hardship. They advance because of it. Council member Yarmil's transmission arrived, interrupting the analysis. His image appeared, and the assembled delegates could see the fear in his expression. High Arbiter, Yarmil said, his voice unsteady, I have toured the human warship and spoken extensively with their leadership. We face a situation unlike anything in Council history. Are they hostile? Zuthen asked. Not hostile, Yarmil replied carefully, but absolutely unwilling to be vulnerable. They built these ships before knowing we existed, as preparation for threats they might encounter. That makes them paranoid, General Korax interrupted, and paranoid species are dangerous. No, Yarmil said firmly, they're not paranoid. They're experienced. Their entire history taught them that being unprepared means extinction, so they refuse to make that mistake. He paused, gathering his thoughts. They view these ships the way we view diplomatic protocols, as necessary tools for survival, Yarmil continued, and they will not dismantle them to satisfy our comfort. Zuthen felt 12,000 years of council certainty crumbling. General Korax, he said, run military simulations. How would our defense fleet fare against a single Titan-class vessel? The general worked his controls, inputting data while the chamber waited in tense silence. Minutes passed before he looked up, his expression grim. A single Titan class could engage 40% of our defense fleet simultaneously, Korax reported, his voice hollow, and based on their weapon signatures and defensive capabilities, it would likely prevail. The chamber went silent. 7 of them, someone whispered. They have 7. They will have 7, Telkva corrected. Currently only 1 is fully operational, but the others will be completed within 5 years. General Korax continued his analysis. To engage humanity militarily, we would need to commit our entire fleet immediately, before the other 6 ships become operational, he said. Even then, success is uncertain, and that's assuming they don't have additional weapon systems they haven't revealed. Council member Dalson, representing one of the oldest species in the Alliance, spoke for the first time. We are discussing military action against a species we contacted for peaceful integration. His ancient voice carried disappointment. Has 12,000 years of peace taught us nothing? It's taught us that peace exists because no one could threaten us, Korax retorted. Now someone can, and will be able to even more in the future. Exactly, Dowson agreed, which means military action is suicide. If they built these ships in peace, imagine what they would build if we gave them a reason to view us as enemies. The observation struck the chamber like a physical blow. Observer Telkva pulled up more data, said. Their industrial capacity is staggering, she said. They converted 30% of their economy to military production, without economic collapse. If threatened, they could potentially reach 60 or 70%. How many ships could they build at that rate? Zuthen asked, dreading the answer. Telkva ran calculations. Conservative estimates suggest they could produce 1 Titan-class vessel every 8 years at current capacity, she reported. If they mobilized fully, possibly 1 every 4 years, with potentially improved designs incorporating lessons learned. The mathematics of military confrontation were clear. Any conflict would drive human production to maximum capacity, resulting in an ever-growing fleet that the Council couldn't match. We have lived 12,000 years believing ourselves supreme, Dalsin said quietly. Perhaps it is time to admit that our supremacy was never tested until now. Looked around the chamber, seeing fear and uncertainty on faces that had known only confidence. What are our options? He asked. We can attempt military action now, General Korax said. Strike before they grow stronger. It would violate every principle we claim to uphold, but it might be our only chance for victory. We can negotiate, Yarmil suggested. Offer them council membership with modified terms. Acknowledge their strength while establishing diplomatic channels. We can isolate them, suggested another delegate. Quarantine human space. Refuse all contact. Let them remain alone. Zuthen considered each option. Military action meant becoming the aggressors, destroying the moral foundation of the Council, and potentially losing anyway. Isolation meant leaving humans to develop unchecked, potentially creating an even greater threat. Negotiation meant accepting that the Council no longer held absolute power. Zuthen said, "What is your assessment of human intentions?" Telkva had been studying human communications and behavior since first detecting them. They want what we all want, she replied. Safety, prosperity, the ability to explore and grow. But they've learned not to trust others for their safety. Can they be trusted? Zuthen pressed. Can we? Telkva countered. They don't know us any better than we know them. We're both operating on assumptions and fear. The truth of that statement settled over the chamber. If we attack them, they'll defend themselves and never trust us, Dalson said. If we isolate them, they'll view us as hostile and prepare accordingly. But if we negotiate, we at least have a chance to build understanding. Understanding with a species that built planet-killing warships? Vexnor protested. understanding with a species that built defensive warships and then stopped broadcasting their location. Corrected. They're not conquerors, they're survivors. Zuthen made his decision. I will travel to Earth personally, he declared, shocking the assembly. If humanity represents a new era for the galaxy, then the Council must meet it with wisdom, not fear. High Arbiter, the risk, Korax began, is necessary, Zuthen interrupted. We have two choices. Adapt to a galaxy where we're not the strongest power, or cling to supremacy through violence and likely fail. I choose adaptation. He looked around the chamber. Prepare diplomatic proposals for modified council membership, he ordered. We will offer humanity a place among us, but we will also be honest about our concerns. And if they refuse, someone asked, then we learn to live in a galaxy with neighbors we cannot control, Zuthen replied, as species have done since the beginning of time. Observer Telkva felt something shift in the chamber, fear giving way to reluctant acceptance. Acceptance. The Council had maintained peace for 12,000 years, but that peace had been built on unchallenged strength. Now they would learn if they could maintain peace when strength was shared. One more thing, Zuthen added, his voice heavy. We will add a classified amendment to our protocols. Humanity must never be given a reason to build an eighth Titan. The delegates nodded, understanding the implication. 7 ships had changed the balance of power. An eighth would suggest humanity felt threatened. And a threatened humanity, with their proven capacity for rapid military development, would be the Council's worst nightmare. Zuthen looked at the holographic image of the indomitable will one last time. 12,000 years of certainty, ended by a species that had been in space for less than a century. Contact Fleet Admiral Chen, he said to Yarmil. Tell her the High Arbiter of the Galactic Council requests the honor of formal negotiations on Earth. The message was sent, and the galaxy held its breath, waiting to see if peace could survive the arrival of humanity's titans. The United Nations Assembly Hall had been modified extensively for the historic meeting. Atmosphere processors accommodated species that breathed different gases. Gravity wells created comfortable zones for beings of various masses, and translation systems hummed with the effort of converting 47 different forms of communication into mutual understanding. High Arbiter Zuthen entered the hall with a delegation of 12 council representatives, each one carefully selected to represent the diversity and power of the Galactic Alliance. Fleet Admiral Chen Wei waited with Ambassador Rodriguez and a dozen human officials, their expressions carefully neutral. The two groups faced each other across a table that seemed too small for the weight of what would be decided here. High Arbiter Zuthen, Chen said, standing to greet him, humanity welcomes you to Earth. Fleet Admiral Chen, Zuthen replied, the Council hopes this meeting will begin anew. They sat, and for a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, Zuthen broke the silence. I will be direct, as I believe humans appreciate honesty, he began. The Council is afraid of humanity. Chen showed no surprise at this admission. We know, she replied. The question is whether that fear will lead to wisdom or violence. We have chosen wisdom, Zuthen said, though I will not pretend the choice was unanimous. Many council members argued for immediate military action. And why didn't they prevail, Chen asked. Because observer Telkva pointed out something we had not considered, Zuthen explained, gesturing to the young insectoid who sat among his delegation. She noted that you built 7 Titan-class vessels in peace, when you thought you might be alone in the galaxy. If we attacked you, how many would you build? As many as necessary, Chen replied without hesitation. We would mobilize every resource, convert every industrial facility, and build until either we prevailed or ceased to exist. The stark honesty of her statement sent ripples through the council delegation. That is precisely why we chose negotiations, Zuthen said. A military confrontation with humanity would become an arms race we cannot win. Chen leaned forward slightly. High Arbiter, I think there's been a fundamental misunderstanding about why we built the Titans, she said. May I explain our perspective? Please. Zuthan gestured for her to continue. Chen activated a holographic display showing Earth's history. Images of wars, disasters, near-extinction events flowed past. For 10,000 years, humanity has fought itself, she began. Nation against nation, ideology against ideology, tribe against tribe. We have nearly destroyed ourselves repeatedly. The images showed mushroom clouds, burning cities, pandemic hospitals, climate disasters. Survived by the smallest margins, Chen continued. And each time we learned that being unprepared meant death. She changed the display to show humanity's first faster-than-light vessel. 80 years ago, we reached the stars, Chen said. For the first time in our history, we faced the possibility of threats we couldn't even imagine. Species with technology beyond our understanding. Civilizations that might view us as resources or threats. So you built weapons, Zuthan observed. We built insurance, Chen corrected. The Titan-class vessels weren't designed to conquer. They were designed to ensure that no matter what we found out here, humanity would have the strength to survive. She looked directly at Zuthan. Our history taught us a simple truth. Weakness invites aggression. Strength commands respect, Chen said. We didn't build the Titans because we wanted to threaten anyone. We built them because we refused to be helpless ever. Again. Ambassador Rodriguez added his voice. Consider our position, he said. One planet, one species, no allies, no knowledge of what existed beyond our solar system. We had two choices. Trust that the universe was kind, or prepare for the possibility it wasn't. And you chose preparation, Observer Telkva said, speaking for the first time. Wouldn't you? Chen asked. If you were alone, vulnerable, and aware that countless other species existed with technology you couldn't match? The question hung in the air. Zuthan realized she was right. Any species in humanity's position would have done the same. Perhaps not as quickly or as extensively, but the basic logic was sound. So what do you want from us? He asked. Chen smiled slightly. The same thing you want from us. Peaceful coexistence, mutual benefit, and the freedom to ensure our own security, she replied. We're willing to join your council, work within your systems, contribute to galactic peace. But, Zuthan prompted, hearing the unspoken condition. But we will not dismantle our defenses to make you comfortable, Chen said firmly. The 7 Titans will remain operational. Our system defenses will remain in place, and humanity will maintain the ability to defend itself. General Korax, who had accompanied Zuthan, spoke up. That creates an imbalance of power, he argued. Your vessels violate the Great Treaty that has maintained peace for 8,000 years. A treaty we didn't sign and didn't know existed when we began construction, Rodriguez countered. You can't retroactively impose your laws on us. Of this class, unless directly threatened by external forces. And in exchange, Zuthan asked, Council membership with certain autonomy provisions, Chen listed. Human space remains under human jurisdiction. We participate in Council decisions, but aren't bound by regulations that compromise our security. And we contribute to mutual defense efforts. The Council delegation conferred quietly. Zuthan weighed the options. This wasn't the absolute authority the Council was accustomed to, but it was better than the alternatives. We have a counter-proposal, he said finally. Humanity joins the Council as a full member, maintains current military assets, but shares defensive technology to help other species improve their own security. Not weapons technology, Chen clarified. Defensive systems only, Zuthan agreed. Sensors, armor, power generation, technology that makes everyone safer without increasing offensive capabilities. With her team. We can agree to that, she said, with one addition. Joint peacekeeping operations. Human vessels will participate in Council security efforts, demonstrating our commitment to galactic peace. The Titans included? Korax asked skeptically. When appropriate, Chen replied. We're not hiding our strength. We're offering to use it for mutual benefit. The negotiations continued for 3 days. Details were hammered out, compromises reached, language carefully crafted. Finally, on the 4th day, both sides stood before the assembled delegates of humanity and the Council. We present the Accord of Mutual Survival, Zhu then announced, a treaty that acknowledges both our differences and our common interests. Chen read the key provisions. Humanity joins the Galactic Council as a full member with autonomous jurisdiction over human space. Human military assets remain at current levels unless external threats require. Expansion. Defensive technology sharing to enhance collective security. Joint peacekeeping and defense operations. Mutual respect for sovereignty and security concerns. Both leaders signed, and the assembly erupted in applause, some enthusiastic, some reluctant, all relieved. Later, in a private meeting, Zhu then spoke candidly with Chen. There's a classified addendum to our council protocols now, he admitted. Humanity must never be given a reason to build an 8th Titan. Chen smiled. There's a classified human military directive, she replied. Construction plans for Titan 8 begin immediately if the council threatens our sovereignty. They looked at each other and laughed, a sound that transcended species, born of mutual understanding. We're going to have an interesting relationship, Zhu then observed. Built on honest fear and reluctant respect, Chen agreed, but honest nonetheless. 50 years later, when an unknown force emerged from the galactic rim, threatening all known civilizations, it was the 7 Titans that led the combined fleet. The UNEN Indomitable Will commanded ships from 48 species, its massive weapons batteries finally unleashed against an enemy that justified their existence. High Arbiter Zuthen, ancient now and near the end of his life, watched the battle from Council headquarters. We were so afraid of them, he said to observer Telkva, who now served as Council military coordinator. We still are, she replied, watching as the Titans tore through enemy formations. But we're grateful too. They built these monsters thinking they might face us, and instead they saved us all. The battle raged for 6 days. When it ended, the hostile force was destroyed, and the Titans returned to their stations. Humanity had proven what Zuthen had suspected 50 years ago. They hadn't built warships to conquer. Built them to survive. And in doing so, they'd given the galaxy a chance to survive as well. The Council's 12,000 years of peace had been maintained through weakness, masquerading as strength. Humanity's arrival had revealed that truth. But it had also revealed something more important. That real peace required the strength to defend it, and the wisdom to know when not to. As the Indomitable Will passed by Council headquarters, Zuthen raised a hand in salute. Captain Rodriguez, now a fleet admiral himself, returned the gesture. 2 species that had met in fear had become allies through honest recognition of each other's nature. The galaxy would never be the same. And perhaps, Zuthen thought, that was exactly what it had needed all along.